Hey there, this is Casey with the M&A Launchpad Podcast. Put it on your calendar. This is a do not miss one-day event. There's going to be incredible headliners, but really at the end of the day, you're going to get a chance to talk to people that have made acquisitions, learn from some of the challenges that they've made, because this is definitely a challenging process. But more importantly, there's going to be people there that can help you and support you along the way, from great vendors, quality of earnings, how to run the due diligence process, and how do I get financed? How do I raise capital? How do I structure all of these things? It's going to be hundreds of people that are all focused, like-minded people. And man, everyone that's come has given us incredible feedback. We look forward to seeing you.
All right. On today's episode, we interviewed Josh Davis, where we talked about what it's like to basically start a company, pivot a little bit, and build a large logistics company that's kind of software backed, and the rapid growth that brings, right? I think over the course of 3 years, they went from idea to, 100 employees, 500 contractors, and all the above, and ultimately making an exit to private equity and what that looked like. And then from that, right, finding what you're passionate about and really giving back to the entrepreneurial community. So Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, it's the entrepreneur journey is tough, and everybody has a different one. You hear about people, I exited my first company in 3 years and I'm out and I've learned. But one of the common things, instead of thinking about the destination, right, of what you're going to exit and how you're going to get there and all those things, I find that the successful guys that we talk to, or gals that we talk to every time on this podcast, they think about the learning experiences that they're getting at every different turn of the events. And I felt like Josh, being a very humble guy, but also, he looks at life as a learning. And, being able to go sell his company, maybe it was an earn out, and all of these things that would really maybe put some barriers for a lot of people, instead of looking at more as like, man, it was a great time to learn and be mentored and be coached along the way. And that's why you start meeting this side of how do you become better? How do you get involved in these things? Mentorship and learning. And so anyways, my takeaway from that was just a wealth of knowledge of what he's learning and how he's learning.
Yeah. And, we dive into just kind of how difficult it is to grow and scale, right? I mean, everybody thinks you're making millions and really everything's going back in the company. And on top of that, like what it's like to walk away from all that and just kind of the relief of stress of no longer having 30 meetings a day and 3,500 emails to kind of follow up on. So those are some of the topics we get to on this one.
All right, guys, just take 1 second here real quick. When you're buying a business, ensuring the financial health of the company is critical. And that's where a quality of earnings partner comes in. Quality of earnings gives you confidence in the financials of the company that you're purchasing. It aims to protect your investment and ensure that you're stepping into a profitable business on day one. Patrick of O'Connell Advisory Group is your dynamic quality of earnings partner. He's here to help you buy the right business on your timeline. Patrick's entire practice is focused on business acquisitions. Your niche is his niche. And over the past decade, Patrick's helped more than 200 buyers like yourself successfully purchase and operate enduring, profitable businesses. In fact, Patrick's helped some listeners of this show. So if you're buying, looking for help with the quality of earnings, financial due diligence, network capital, and more, head to o'connelladvisorygroup.com or just click the link in the show notes.
Hey, Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're excited about this one. So why don't you jump in? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 20 years now. Really started from nothing. What really drove me to be an entrepreneur, there's a number of things, but both my grandfathers were successful business owners, one in the mining industry, then other in construction. He was also mayor of a town that he lived in. And so seeing that as a kid, I was super inspired by them, and just seeing them, create jobs and help people and, build a life for the family and as well as their employees. So that was always inspiring for me. And then growing up, my parents, I watched them go through some hard things financially, which led to them getting divorced, and we lost our family home through that process as well. And so I think the combination of seeing my grandfathers being successful business owners and then seeing the struggles my parents went through, just kind of really lit a fire to me to want to kind of follow in my grandfather's footsteps. And then from there, I kind of thought the typical route, I needed to go to, college and university, get a business degree. So that's what I started doing out of high school. Unfortunately, one of my grandfathers ended up getting sick with cancer, and I was very close with him. So I ended up dropping out of school to take care of him. So I spent, a couple of years taking care of him. Yeah, thanks. I mean, it was very tough to do, but it was just something that I knew I had to do, I had to do for my grandfather. And so, through that, I learned a lot about business and his career, and meeting with different business partners, and we did some traveling together. I learned a lot. So that really sparked me wanting to continue to move in his footsteps.
That mentorship, man, that mentorship you got more out of than college. I'll tell you that right there.
I mean, my wife, on the other hand, graduated in a top university from our area. And so she's very, she's got a business degree as well. And then I went the other route, got, good mentorship from people like my grandfather. And then after that, but that was, getting that real world experience was a game changer for me. So basically he was quite sick, and he sailed a lot. After he'd do a business deal, he'd go off and sail to Tahiti and Mexico and Hawaii and all these places with my grandmother. And they were very adventurous. And, he wanted to, after my grandmother passed away, he wanted to go on one last sailing adventure. And I, as a kid, was never allowed to go. He's always got in big storms, lightning striking the mast, and all that stuff. So
sounds like a badass, man.
He was very, very tough, old school guy. I mean, he was my best friend and mentor. And so we ended up going on a sailing adventure. I was in my early 20s, could finally do that. And it was a bucket list thing for him. He wanted to do one last trip down to the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. It's a bit of a long story, but the short story is, the first 5 days, it was like out of a movie. We're catching salmon and tuna, and we're cooking fish, and it's, beautiful weather. Then eventually, we got in this massive storm. To me, it felt like 100-foot waves, but maybe they were like 40, 50 foot. Totally destroyed the boat. Very lucky to make it out of alive. Fortunately we did. Ended up getting into shore, and then he passed away soon after that. We didn't make it to Mexico, but we made it to Northern California. And even, going through that kind of storm, there's a lot of parallels to what I do in our business, and putting the right people in the right seats and having the right leadership and things like that. We definitely weren't prepared for that trip. One, my grandfather, who's the skipper, was dying of cancer, and we had a couple of my buddies from school, and then one of his friends. And so, we definitely weren't prepared. We weren't monitoring the weather and things like we should have. So lots of parallels of business, having the right systems and the right team. So that was a big wake up call for me. After that, after he passed away, I basically did a number of different business ventures, went into some different industries. I followed in his footsteps in the mining industry. Got connected with his old business partners and old geologists. And that's what really, sparked my interest about doing acquisitions. And, I saw, taking over distressed mining companies and doing mergers and roll-ups and things like that. And so that's something that I really liked. I liked, taking over an underperforming asset, turning it around and putting the right people and systems and things like that. So, after my wife and I got married, she had a business degree, but she was working in transportation logistics. She was working in one of the biggest shipping companies in the world. And then a friend of mine who's in the trucking industry, we're both friends, and we're both in each other's wedding parties. And he pitched me on a strategy to do some acquisitions in the transportation space. And my wife was very and this is back about just over 10 years ago now. Especially where we were in Western Canada, there wasn't a lot of tech-focused logistics companies. So my wife was really passionate about technology, working for an international shipping company. They would send her, and she was in her early 20s then as well. They would send her all over, to learn more about their systems, and she'd come back to the office and train them and show them how it can make them more efficient. So, so we ended up, week after our honeymoon, started a business with another partner. And just got going. The short story is that from startup to exit was about 3 years. We were one of the fastest growing logistics companies in Canada. We built our own technology. I talk about this a lot. I was totally against it. I thought we should just use something off the shelf. I thought, spending all this money on programmers, I thought it didn't make sense. But my wife and my partner really felt like we needed to do it, and it would really help us streamline operations. And so reluctantly, I said, okay, let's do it. And we ended up building this amazing system, streamlined everything. It helped us recruit top talent, right out of university. We were able to, bring people into like an old school industry, and it was a lot of fun. So we scaled quite rapidly.
Really quick. So you started the business from scratch.
Yeah.
Right. What was the vision of what you guys were going to actually go make? And also, what was the problem that you guys saw that you were actually trying to solve? Because logistics honestly, it means whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit more like, what was the problem you saw and what were you trying to solve?
Yeah. So originally when my partner kind of it was about a year, he was trying to pitch me on it, but he showed me like how there was a lot of like small, mom and pop trucking companies, and there was ability to do a roll up strategy. So that was what we thought we were going to do. So we started out asset-based, did an acquisition in asset-based trucking. And, we thought, the vision was to like scale, a large trucking company, across Canada and into the US. After kind of dabbling in that for a year, we realized like, we're not trucking guys. We're not maintenance guys. What we really liked was technology and sales and building teams. So about a year into it, we pivoted, and then we focused on asset light transportation. So we totally changed what our model was. And then we focused on being as asset light as possible. So we did acquisitions in the space. We would keep trailers. So we would never keep any trailers that we own. We'd always do like full wet lease programs. So we didn't want to run maintenance and have shops and things like that. And then we like scaled up the technology, the freight management, the freight brokerage side as well. So we turned into like an asset light carrier / freight management broker. And,
Nice.
And that's how we pivoted. And we scaled quite rapidly, and we got into different streams from long haul to short haul to LTL to warehousing. So we did a whole bunch of different lines of services where we could do an acquisition and cross sell.
All right. So you still said a lot, and I'm not an expert in logistics, so I'm going to help dumb it down for the audience. And so like at its core, what was the actual software doing?
Yeah.
Right?
So
was it coordinating freight getting moved between places, between different companies? Was it, helping lease and for, providing a simple system for people for you to inventory manage your product and, your trucks and having people lease it? Was it all the above, none of the above?
Yeah. I mean, originally it started out as like dispatch software. So, and focus on asset light. So we wanted to like basically make it as efficient as possible for our team with as less clicks and streamline everything so they could move the freight as quickly and efficiently as possible. So that's how we originally designed it. And then when we do an acquisition in a different area, then we build new modules like LTL consolidation modules so that we could make sure the trucks are fully loaded and visibility. And so from there, we just kept building off of it. And that's why, building in-house, a lot of people, I don't always recommend this, but for us, it was a game changer because when we acquire a new business, we would build a new module so we get more visibility, making sure we're being more efficient, make sure we understood the business. And then I got really focused on, gamifying the business and understanding, the scorecards and the metrics and the gross profit and also giving visibility to each team member so they knew kind of where they were at in regards to the business as well. So that's kind of where it started. And then obviously, getting into like the invoicing, accounting side and making sure everything's talking to each other. But yeah, it originally just started off as like, hey, let's make the dispatch as efficient as possible. And then from there, we just saw the power of building out systems to streamline things and give you more visibility.
Yeah, so I've had my fair share of logistics, right? So right after COVID, the company I had acquired was in the oil field.
Yeah.
And right after COVID, which absolutely there was no business in the oil field, we had to put a plan together within 6 months to explain to SBA, hey, we are a going concern because they deferred 6 months on the note. So in that month, I went ahead and just bought trucks. And over that next year, we bought about 18 trucks, trailers, hopper bottoms. I mean, we just loaded up. Now the market rates just got crushed in 22. A lot of there's a lot of theories around it, but there was just a lot of drivers taking lower rates. It just became very difficult. So we just pulled back, and today we run about 9 trucks doing local grain hauling. But what we all want to do in that space is to be asset light. Because the cost to buy that truck, right? 250 grand if you want to buy a nice one. And the problem with these PACCARs and some of these new trucks is that they're using these computer chips, and the chips, if it goes down or that thing shows, whatever error on it, it's very expensive to fix that chip. Right. Totally. And so you find yourself buying the old trucks that don't have the old technology, but you've got to have maintenance on that side. So if you can go to just dropping trailers, doing all of those things, orchestrating that in freight, man, that's why you guys scaled. You didn't get in the trucking business. You got into that's where the logistics conversation is. You're organizing the freights. You're dealing with the carrier, the groups that need that product to get that stuff there. That's where the money's at. And it is a very challenging, highly competitive space, at least in the US and I'm sure in Canada. So, man, that's a pretty incredible story, man, because I think about it all the time when it comes to our company. And just to connect all those dots, it's a lot to connect.
Totally. I mean, exactly how you said it. That's our vision to build and scale, the largest trucking company in Canada and move across North America. It requires a lot of capital. We bootstrapped everything. We basically got lines of credit from the bank. And so, we didn't have any outside investors. So we needed to move to asset light for necessity to continue to scale. And then, we just use our skill set in building technology and sales. And then just, rapidly figuring out how to provide solutions. But like you said, it's very competitive industry, and margins can be low as well. So you gotta figure out, ways to make sure that you're profitable. And that's why really managing the metrics of the business is super important. And it was a wild ride. I learned a lot. I mean, from a business standpoint and some of the things we're doing now, I definitely got my MBA learning how to run a logistics company.
So that was a 3-year run. So in 3 years, you guys accomplished. So what happened in the third year?
Yeah, where'd you grow it to? And then kind of, how did the transaction itself happen for the sale?
Yeah. So the plan was never to, I don't want to say never sell. When we first started, we talked about it. But we just put our heads down and got into it, and we loved it. Seeing our team scale and, moving across Canada and doing acquisitions and turnaround strategies. We were just having a lot of fun, especially, my wife and I, just getting married and built. The whole business our whole life revolved around the business. So obviously that can be a little bit challenging in marriage, but it definitely made us stronger. And so kind of what happened was after, close to 3 years into it, my wife was pregnant, with our first child. She basically just said, I don't want to continue kind of running this business 24/7, 365 in her role. So she said, when we have our child, I think I want to be out of operations. So for me, it's even though on paper, it looked like we were making lots of money and the business is scaling, our headcount was growing like crazy. So people think, we're just piling in the money. But when you scale like that in a low margin business, everything goes back into the business. So even my wife saying, hey, I want the ability to possibly be a stay-at-home mom, I was kind of panicking a little bit. I'm like, we're barely paying ourselves anything. And, how are we going to make this work? And so that was kind of a point where we thought about, hey, what should we do next? So I went to my partner and talked to him about it. And, he felt like now was the right time, especially we got to a point where if we want to keep scaling, we needed to get more capital, maybe take an investor. It's just, it's a capital intensive business. So that was kind of the tipping point. So we, ended up, going to market and, doing the dog and pony show and meeting with different, strategic buyers, private equity, And so that's kind of what happened. And then fortunately, we found a transportation company that was privately equity backed in the US. And so they had a couple large assets in our market. We ended up choosing them. So it was private equity backed plus a strategic. And so their group was like one of the biggest transportation companies in North America. And so it was, it was a good fit for us. And then I worked with them during a transition for about 2 years. At the end of the transition, I made the difficult decision to step down as CEO. They, gave me opportunities to move into a larger role inside their organization. And I just kind of felt I wanted to kind of be able to control my own destiny and get back into acquisitions and build something again. So I ended up stepping down coming up about 4 years ago.
So really quick, because there's a lot in that. So how big were you guys? And then whenever you were selling, it sounds like you guys went out and found and sourced your own buyers, or did you guys use a broker or somebody to kind of help facilitate just finding you buyers?
We actually ended up using an M&A advisor. So we had a guy who was kind of specialized in, or a group that was specialized in trucking. So that was really helpful for us because we could continue to operate the business. Mm-hmm. As far as like numbers, the size wise, I mean, we were one of the largest in British Columbia, Canada, and one of the fast growing in all of Canada in logistics. But I got to be a little bit careful about numbers because it was a private company and I sold. So
can you see how many people it was, just to kind of help maybe the audience can kind of gauge?
Yeah, we went from about 3 of us to about 100, like kind of the internal office staff. And then we had, that's not including like all of our contracted, carriers and things like that. We had probably about 500 contractors on top of that. And then we had different warehouses across Canada, not ones that we're fully operating. We were basically outsourcing them. So that was kind of the size.
Okay. And then in terms of the acquisition, right, how did it get structured? How much of that can you share in terms of like, was there, it sounds like you were required to stay on for 2 years. Was there an earn-out component? Was there a seller finance component? Was there a role, or did they just want the whole thing?
There was an earn-out period. So, I mean, that's kind of common knowledge in the deal, but it was a 2-year earn-out structure. And especially for us, like we were such high growth and technology focused. We found kind of going to market that, people were concerned about buying us. Like there's a lot of questions not understanding, like, how do we continue to scale so fast? That seemed like a risk to, when we were going through the buyer process. So there was always going to be a component of earnout in any way that we went.
Okay. And you guys are already familiar with that. So it wasn't, because some buyers or sellers, right, they're like, what? I don't want an earnout. What if they screw up the business, right? And they don't understand the value of earnout and why it's there.
I knew about earnouts from being in the mining industry. Ideally it would have been, it would have been nice to not structure an earnout if you could. I always tell that to buyers, if you can get away with it, try to do it without an earnout. But if you get enough upside, it can definitely be worth it. And one thing I will say about working with this group, and especially them being private equity backed, I actually got my eyes really open to a lot of things, especially on the finance side and, them doing acquisitions. And so, being part of like the executive team and, working with the CEO, originally I was reporting to him. It was an amazing learning experience, and, working with the CFO as well. So, the earnout was a component of it, but it was also like an amazing learning experience for me, running the company. And then fortunately, the way that we had it structured, we were running fully independently. So we got support from, back office and financial and things like that. So that was, that was great. So
nice.
It was a great experience for me. So yeah,
we had a good friend of mine, Carl Kleiman, here on this podcast probably about 3-4 months ago. And he said something very similar to what you said. He was like, didn't really know on his acquisition about rolling in equity and doing all these things, but he kind of just trusted the process, went through it, and he made that observation that, man, the learning that I got through that whole process was stuff that just elevated my entire entrepreneurship game. And then it's allowed him to go to another company now and really take advantage of all those skills that he got. Plus, his role ended up being very well.
I think his role rolled 3 times, didn't he?
Yeah, but very well. But again, he reflected similar to you. But man, he's like the education to be able to sit in that group and to learn that stuff, man, it's taken me to a whole other game in this other company that I came to do years later.
Totally. And I would say the same thing. And I told the group when I left, like, it was an amazing learning experience. I am very grateful for the time that I had with them for the couple of years. And I've definitely been able to, it definitely up my game in acquisitions, and even like some of the things, learning about how they do the financial budgeting and stuff like that, stuff that we did nothing, especially when we started the business. So I took a lot what I've learned there, and I've been able to apply it in our kind of next venture. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And that's why, like, I tell people, if you're going to exit, make sure you find the right group that you're going to enjoy. If you are in an earnout, that you're going to enjoy working with, and making sure that going into it, there should be some sort of, learning experience, something you can gain through it as well. If you're going to, sell your business, sell your baby, I talk about, selling your business and working in the business. It's like almost like giving your kid up for adoption and living in the same house, right? So it can definitely be emotional and challenging, and especially when you've got a larger entity purchasing you, and you've got to make sure that you're kind of fitting in, and you don't want to be the bottleneck in certain things, and ultimately you don't own the company anymore. So it can be emotionally challenging, but overall I had a really great experience with these guys, and it worked out well. I think it was a win-win in the end.
Yeah. And were you able to roll anything forward as well, or no?
Not in this deal, no.
Okay. Because the next thing is really, what did you go to negotiate with them in terms of like, hey, how we're going to grow this company? But I guess it's a little bit less relevant in that scenario.
We definitely continued to scale together. And they provided me a lot of back-end support and things like that. So it definitely helped us scale. Like we continue to scale quite significantly over the 2 years. So I felt good about transitioning out with the business continuing to growing. So,
Okay. That's great. So then from there, what's next? What did you do after that? Tell us where you are today, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, to be totally honest with you, once I actually stepped down, I kind of hit this wall, like, having hundreds of people, either reporting to you or needing things from you and all this stuff. And literally that, your email's getting shut down. It was like, I walked out of the office, I had some tears, with my team and everything, and, people that going through that and building and scaling and, the business, working long hours. And it was really hard to say goodbye to my team. I still care about them, and I still have relationships with people from the company, even though it's been 4 years, but they were like family to us. So once I actually kind of, made the decision, I kind of went through this, like, not like a depression, but more of like, who am I? Like, what is my identity? And, obviously I had quite a bit of capital in the bank. I didn't need to work if I didn't want to. And so I really I had another baby at the time. So we have our 2 kids now. And so I just spent time with the family, pouring into them, getting to know, my kids really well. Obviously I was really busy in the business when they were first born. And so did some bucket list trips, took my mom and our mother-in-law to Italy, and, did a whole bunch of things with my family. And then after about 6 months, my wife was basically like, okay, I think it's time for you to get going now. And I'm really passionate about people and business. And so, so that's kind of how we started. And then we, went to some different mentors and trying to figure out, what we wanted to do. So we set up our own family office. We're not a massive family office. We're a boutique family office. It's all our own capital. And we started making strategic investments and acquisitions in different industries. And one thing I realized, so yeah, that's what I thought. I thought, we'd be like, small private equity arm, control our own destiny when making investments. And then maybe I'd sit on a board and, give some strategic advice. And as I started doing that, I realized a lot of these companies, founders were, stuck in the weeds, they're involved in all the stuff that I went through, involved in all the big decisions, in the sales, in the firefighting, they didn't put in the right systems, even like, the right financial or the right, CRM system and all that stuff. So it was stuff that me and my wife were very skilled at. Like we've done some pretty nasty turnaround situations, companies losing a lot of money to, getting over, $1 million in EBITDA within, 12 months and things like that. So we really when we were making it, even these businesses that were stable and, had, a decent amount of EBITDA, they still had challenges, putting the right people in the right seats, getting the founder out of the weeds, all that stuff. So through that, we set up a business consulting arm. And so that's where we started, originally we built it to make it when we made investments into a company, we come in, we help them with their human capital side. My wife and I, we built a leadership development program to help, people upskill and learn to be managers and, all the kind of soft skill stuff, having critical conversations, holding people accountable, all that stuff. So we started doing that inside the businesses. And then when I was doing acquisitions, I saw, businesses that we didn't want to buy, they were kind of stuck. So they really wanted us to buy, we're a high integrity group and, we've got a good reputation, but maybe their business just didn't fit our criteria or fit our vision and values. So then we just started to consult. And so helping them, put the right people in the right place, building the right systems, bringing in the right technology, making sure it talks to each other, building the right scorecards. And then, so originally, when we built it, it was out of just supporting our own deals. And then we saw there's actually a big market for that and helping other businesses. And I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs. So it kind of took off from there. And so we've done a few acquisitions in that space. And we've got a technology company. And so we do AI and we can build software as well, but basically kind of putting in the right technology, making sure it talks together. Then we've got a human capital firm as well inside there. So helping, recruit top talent, develop leaders, all that stuff. And so, as it started as kind of a side project, it's really taken off over the past couple of years. And I'm really super excited about that as well. And so I like the fact that I can still impact and help small to medium-sized businesses. I mean, we have some large organizations that we, consult on their, human capital people side, but I'm really passionate about helping small to medium-sized business owners through that. So that's basically
a great story, because I'll tell you, man, after being somebody that's in the weeds, have operated being in the company part, right? To be able to leap to consulting, you've got to just breathe a little bit differently, right? Because you're not having to do all that, but you're able to help think way above the 30,000 foot view to help them make the right decisions. And buddy, that is a much more fun place to be than actually in the grind, operating the company every day, right?
Totally. And the thing about that is I learned through getting around guys that were way further along than me and guys with real world experience. So even though some of the founders are helping, they're, I wouldn't say twice my age, although some are close. It's from my experience, I can help make them make quicker decisions on what they need to do, as opposed to them just keep being in the weeds. So I get a lot of joy out of, using from my experience. And I mean, I say this as well, I've had a really good 10-year run. Me and my wife have been on a really good run together. It's been really hard. But we're very good at doing acquisitions and turning businesses around. But first 10 years of my journey, a lot of hard knocks, a lot of failed mistakes, a lot of, not knowing how to be a leader and getting the right people in the right places and all that stuff, and being in the weeds and just focused on revenue is going to solve all my problems, just bringing the revenue. And so, I love the fact that I can give back by advising these guys about the things that I made mistakes on.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. It's a lot more fun to kind of coach and guide and nurture. And the problem is you can't force change like you can if you were, running the show. But at the same time, right, you don't have the grind of the day to day to kind of deal with, because it's, working on a business is very different than working in the business. And I think a lot of times it's a lot more fun to work on the business and strategize, because that's the stuff that can really impact and move the needle.
So Josh, a lot of the people listening on our podcast, these are people that have been probably mid-level career. They're thinking about making the acquisition leap. Maybe they have started a company, they went back to their career, and now they're thinking about buying a company and running the day-to-day. So being a consultant and having the experience you've had, seeing a lot of deals and stuff, what are just a few of the kind of like key tips that you would tell our listeners that you've kind of taken away when you do your consulting? What are some of those key things you really help them focus on?
Okay. So the first thing, there's a couple things. It's always I say, if you're going to, acquire a business, you got to be really focused and making sure you get the right people in the right seats. And so that's always where we start. You do an acquisition, you got to look at the team that you're acquiring, especially, hopefully you've got some industry experience in that. But if you don't, and you're passionate about a certain industry, you got to make sure that the company you're acquiring, they got the right people in the right seats. And if you feel that they don't, you got to make a decision. How are you going to manage that? And so a lot of times when you do an acquisition, a founder-led business, you got to take over their responsibilities as well. So you got to focus on the people. You got to see, is it a strong team? Is this something that I can step into and I've got the right team that's going to support and the right culture? And then the second thing is always the systems. Do they have kind of a clear playbook or the right systems and technology so that you understand how the delivery of the service is going to happen? So those are the two things I always talk about: people, systems, and then a big one for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, business owner, or if you're going in to do an acquisition. I've got lots of books on this as well, and I attend conferences and get mentors. You better learn to level up your leadership skills, because ultimately the way that you're going to be able to attract top talent or retain them is they got to look up to the leader, and they got to be a visionary. So that's one thing that I spend a lot of time is really developing my leadership development skills, being a strong leader and understanding how to be strategic, set a vision, hold people accountable, and get the right people on the bus. So those are the big things.
Love yourself. Tips, man. No, great stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And with that said, we'll go ahead and move on to our rocket round, where we ask our guests the same 3 questions. So first question, Josh, what would you like to do? What do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, funny enough, even though I went through a big storm and almost died, I love boating. So right now, just got I'm fortunate enough, we live, right on the water here. So we've got a boat, and right now it's just a kind of a ski family boat, a little bit of a fishing boat. But yeah, now my wife and I are talking about going to that next level, something a little bit bigger, somewhere we can go to the islands and sleep over. But yeah, I'm not ready for the open waters yet, but yeah,
PTSD from that, right?
100%. Yeah, that was a life-defining moment for sure.
All right, next question. What's your most memorable moment in your business journey?
My most memorable moment. There's been so many. I think, this kind of goes together, but definitely starting a business with my wife and her, me leaving an opportunity in the mining industry and her leaving her job and just doing whatever it took to make that successful. That was very memorable. And then ultimately, doing that together, building and scaling it up, and then having that exit, even though it was bittersweet, it really validated, the years of grind and sacrifice that, we did for our marriage to set ourselves up for our family and our kids.
All right, fair enough.
Beautiful.
And then the last question, what's your favorite tool or resource?
My favorite tool or resource? Actually, I'm going to go a different way on this. So the best resource that I personally have is getting around mentors and peers that have actually operated and scaled businesses or things that are further along than me. That's always been my best resources, getting around people that have been in my shoes and are further along. I always tell people, you gotta get in the rooms with the right people. And I guess tool, obviously, customizing, AI and chat GDP and, and then integrating that stuff with HubSpot CRM. I think right now, those are my two kind of favorite tools.
All right, fair enough. Awesome.
Beautiful. All right. So Josh, how can people get a hold of you?
People can get a hold of me on, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Scaling with Josh Davis, or you can go to our family office website, which is jldavisenterprises.com. We got a bunch of free resources on there, or if you add me to LinkedIn, you can DM me the word scale, and I send people a playbook that I have. It's frameworks that my wife and I use to scale, acquire, and exit companies. So if anyone wants our resources, feel free to reach out.
Man, and we will put that in our show notes so people have that. That is incredible. Well, Josh, thank you very much for spending some time with us today and telling your story. It's pretty incredible.
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.